The Locker That Knocked Back. The New Kid and the Hollow Hallet was the first week of October at Millstone High in rural Ohio. The kind of school that smelled like old textbooks and floor polish. Tyler, a quiet junior who had just transferred, stayed late that Monday to make up a missed history test. The halls were almost empty, except for the low hum of the vending machines and the occasional clank of metal lockers expanding in the cool air. As he walked toward his locker, number 247, he noticed something strange. The corridor seemed to darken behind him, the fluorescent lights flickering one by one, as if following his steps. When he reached his locker and opened it, a faint knock echoed from inside the metal. Once, twice, then again. Thinking it was just the pipes, Tyler laughed nervously. But when he leaned closer, a voice, faint and raspy, whispered his name from within. Whispers. Behind the metal the next morning, Tyler tried to shake it off. He told himself it was stress, exhaustion, anything but real. But at lunch, his locker door was slightly ajar, and taped inside was an old Polaroid, a blurry picture of someone standing exactly where he had been the night before. The face was blacked out, but the posture, it was his. "Who's messing with me?" he muttered, glancing around. A janitor, Mr. Henson, overheard and froze. "Locker 247, the old man said, voice cracking. "That one's been sealed for years before they renumbered. A kid years back, Henson didn't finish. He just walked away, shaking his head. That night, Tyler stayed late again, determined to catch whoever was playing games. But when he stood before the locker, it began to breathe. Slow, rhythmic, like lungs drawing air through steel. The recordings, Tyler decided to record the sounds on his phone. He placed it against the locker door and stepped back, his heart racing as the hollow knocks began again, faster this time, impatient, almost angry. When he reviewed the audio, it wasn't just knocking. It was whispering. A voice repeating, "Let me out." He tried to tell his teacher, Mrs. Lang, but she dismissed it as attention-seeking. "There's no student in that wing after hours." "You shouldn't be there," she said sharply. That night, Tyler lay in bed replaying the recording. But somewhere between the knocks and whispers, he heard something new, a quiet scream underneath. Not distant, not old, one but fresh. He dropped his phone. The scream was his own voice. The missing files. Tyler broke into the library archives after school, looking for old student records. He found a yearbook from 1999. Page 37, the junior class photo, had a kid who looked eerily like him. Same haircut, same half smile. The name under it, Tyler Grayson. He flipped to the back of the book, where students had written messages. Next to Tyler's name, in shaky pen, someone had written, "He never made it home. Last seen at his locker." The air in the library shifted, cold, electric. The lights dimmed as he felt a breath on his neck. He turned and no one was there, but when he looked back at the yearbook, the photo had changed. The other Tyler was now staring straight at him, eyes blackened out. The locker opens. Tyler ran back to the hall, panic pushing him forward. He yanked open locker 247, shouting, "What do you want?" Inside was nothing, just a pitch-black void where the back panel should be. A faint metallic sound came from deep inside, like chains dragging. Then fingers, pale, cold, thin fingers reached out, gripping the frame from within. Tyler stumbled back, but the hand shot out faster, grabbing his wrist. He screamed, pulling away as the locker rattled violently, doors slamming open and shut. The metal bent outward like it was breathing again. Then with a deafening clang, everything went still. The locker stood wide open, empty, but Tyler's reflection in the locker door wasn't matching his movements anymore. The replacement the next morning, Millstone High buzzed with whispers. A new student had transferred in, quiet, polite, a little pale, but nothing unusual. His name tag read Tyler Grayson. When the janitor passed locker 247 that afternoon, he paused. The door, once sealed shut, was freshly painted, a faint scratch etched near the handle. Under the new number plate, the old digits, 247, could still be seen, faintly visible beneath the paint. That night, when the last bell echoed and the halls emptied, the security camera caught something. A figure, identical to Tyler, standing before the locker, whispering softly into the metal. Then the faint sound of knocking, this time from inside. The girl in the yearbook, a picture that shouldn't exist. Ridgemont High, Arizona. The kind of suburban school where everything felt normal, tiled hallways, pep rallies, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Emma, a junior yearbook editor, spent most afternoons in the photography lab sorting through old photos for the school's 50th anniversary issue. One evening, while flipping through a box of undeveloped negatives from 1985, she noticed something odd. One roll was labeled, "Do not print." Curiosity got the best of her. She developed the photos in the darkroom, under the red light's eerie glow. The images were simple class portraits, smiling students, the gym, the parking lot, until the last frame appeared. A girl stood in the middle of the hallway, eyes sunken, mouth slightly open as if mid-whisper. Emma didn't recognize her uniform. It wasn't the current design. On the bottom corner of the photo, faintly scratched into the film, were the words, "She's still here." The reappearance Emma scanned the picture into her laptop to investigate further. The face, blurred yet hauntingly familiar, seemed to shift when she zoomed in, the features changing slightly each time she looked. That night, she dreamed of the school's empty hallways, every locker open, papers scattered across the floor. A whisper echoed through the halls, "Find me." The next day, during lunch, Emma showed the photo to her best friend, Mia. "Who is she?" Mia frowned. "There's no student like that in any archive." That evening, Emma returned to the lab to recheck the negatives, but the photo was gone. The sleeve that had contained it was empty, wet with some kind of thick, dark residue. Then she noticed the reflection in the lab's window, the girl from the photo standing just behind her shoulder. The name in the margins determined to understand, Emma combed through old yearbooks stored in the school library. Dusty pages crackled as she turned them. 1985, 1984, 1986, until she found it. There she was, Clara Hills, sophomore. But there was no caption, no note, no club photo. Every student around her had written cheerful sign-offs, but next to her portrait was a single message in red ink. "Do not speak to her after dark." Emma's fingers trembled. She flipped the page, but Clara wasn't in any later yearbook. No record of her graduation, no obituary, nothing. As she looked closer, Emma realized the ink wasn't red. It had dried into a deep brown, too dark, too uneven. And when she held it to the light, the letters shimmered wetly as though freshly written. The girl in the hall. The next evening, Emma stayed late to close up the photography lab. The fluorescent lights above flickered and buzzed like angry insects. When she passed the trophy case by the gym, she froze. Reflected in the glass behind her was that same girl, Clara. Same faded 1980s uniform, same blank stare. Emma spun around, heart hammering, but the hallway was empty. Then came the whisper, soft, trembling right by her ear. "How you took my picture." Emma dropped her bag and ran. As she bolted past the lockers, the air grew colder, her breath turning visible. The school's intercom crackled to life, static then faint weeping. In that moment, she knew she wasn't supposed to have seen that photo at all. The yearbook room. Emma barricaded herself inside the yearbook room, the hum of the computer fan, the only sound. She tried deleting the scanned photo, but the file wouldn't vanish. Instead, new folders kept appearing, as dozens of them, all named Clara Hills JPG. Each file showed the same girl, but closer each time, her mouth slightly more open, eyes emptier. Mia called her phone, panicked. "Emma, I can see you." On the school's live feed, "You're not alone." Emma looked at the monitor. The security camera showed the hallway outside. A shape moved across the screen. A flickering figure that didn't walk but floated. Then the door handle began to turn, slow and deliberate. Emma unplugged the computer. Everything went black, except for one faint glow, the red light of the camera recording her. The next edition. The next morning, the janitor found the yearbook lab door unlocked. The computers were on, every screen displaying a single image. Emma's face pale and frightened, her eyes rolled upward. The principal ordered the lab sealed and told everyone Emma had transferred schools overnight. No one questioned it. But a week later, when the new yearbooks arrived from the printer, students noticed something odd. On page 32 in the staff section, a new photo had been added. It showed Emma, standing beside a faint translucent girl in a vintage uniform. At the bottom, in faint script, the caption read, "Photo by Clara Hills." The detention that never ended. The Friday detention, it was a grey Friday afternoon at Oak Ridge High School in upstate New York, a place where the smell of rain mixed with disinfectant and teenage boredom. Jake, a senior known for skipping classes, had landed himself in detention again. The room sat at the end of an unused hallway, near the old science wing that had been sealed off for renovations years ago. Only 4 students were there that day: Jake, Amber, Darius, and Lily, along with Mr. Cole, the monotone history teacher who rarely blinked. The clock on the wall read 3:59 p.m. Mr. Cole locked the door and said flatly, "No one leaves until 4:30. But as the clock's second hand ticked past 4, it didn't stop. It looped back to 3:59, then again. Jake frowned. "Mr. Cole, the clock's broken." Mr. Cole didn't answer. He was staring out the window, but the reflection showed him smiling. Time stands still. The students laughed nervously, assuming it was a prank. But when Amber checked her phone, the screen flickered, time frozen at 3:59 p.m. The hallway beyond the glass door was pitch black, though it had been daylight seconds earlier. Darius tried the door. Locked. Mr. Cole remained at his desk, writing something over and over in a leather-bound attendance book. The scratching of his pen echoed unnaturally loud. Jake leaned closer to read it. Each line was the same. 4 entered. 3 may leave. Suddenly, the fluorescent lights popped, one after another, plunging the room into an amber glow from the emergency light above the door. Mr. Cole finally looked up, his eyes completely white. "Detention isn't over," he said softly. "Not for all of you." The first to go, Lily screamed and ran for the door, pounding on it. The sound didn't echo, it just died in the air. Jake joined her, slamming his shoulder against the glass until it cracked. But behind it wasn't the familiar hallway. It was another room. Their own classroom, identical, looping infinitely like a reflection in a mirror. Amber stumbled backward, tripping over a desk. She landed hard, her hand pressing against something sticky on the floor. It was blood, faint streaks forming words. "Stay seated." Mr. Cole's head jerked toward her, neck bending unnaturally. "Amber," he rasped, "you were tardy." He stood, eyes glowing faintly. The lights flickered, and when they steadied, Amber was gone. Only her chair remained, gently rocking, the hallway that wasn't there. Jake grabbed the master keyring from Mr. Cole's desk and bolted for the hallway, Darius close behind. The moment they stepped out, the school was silent. Too silent. Lockers lined the walls, but each was melted shut, the metal warped as if burned. The air was heavy, tasting of copper and rot. They ran toward the main exit, but the farther they went, the longer the hallway stretched. The school just kept going. Same posters, same flickering light, repeating endlessly. "Jake," Darius whispered, "I think we're not supposed to leave." Behind them, footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate. Jake turned around, and saw Amber. Only it wasn't her anymore. Her head tilted at a broken angle, eyes rolled white, a faint grin twisting her lips. She mouthed words without sound. Darius froze, unable to move as she reached for him. The rules of detention. Jake stumbled back into the classroom, slamming the door behind him. Mr. Cole sat calmly, the attendance book now open on Jake's desk. Next to each name, red check marks bled through the paper. "You should have stayed put," Mr. Cole said, voice deepening, echoing from everywhere. "Every infraction has a cost." Jake looked down at the page. Darius's name faded before his eyes. The door rattled violently as something banged from the other side, heavy, rhythmic, like a heartbeat in the walls. He tried to erase the marks, but the ink smeared into shapes, faces distorted, screaming silently from the paper. Then Mr. Cole's pen snapped. The lights died, and in the pitch dark, Jake heard chairs scraping closer. One by one, the permanent list Monday morning, the principal found the detention room empty. Chairs overturned, the old attendance book open on the desk. Mr. Cole was gone too. The security footage showed nothing after 3:59 p.m. The recording looped the same 10 seconds on repeat. A new teacher took over the next week, but no one ever used that classroom again. It remained locked until a janitor years later peeked inside. The desks were dusty, the air stale, but on the chalkboard fresh handwriting glowed faintly in the dim light. 4 entered. 3 may leave. The janitor looked down. On the last page of the attendance book, new names had been written. Students currently enrolled. At the bottom in neat cursive was one more addition. Jake, present. And when the janitor blinked, the chalk on the board changed. Detention resumes Friday. The morning announcements. A normal morning turns strange. It was a chilly Tuesday morning at Crescent Valley High in Oregon, the kind of place where fog hung over the football field and the smell of wet pine crept into every classroom. The day began like any other, until the intercom clicked on. "Good morning, Crescent Valley," said a cheerful voice. Except it wasn't the usual announcer, Principal Meyer. It was a young girl's voice, calm, almost too calm. Students exchanged confused looks as the announcement continued, reading the lunch menu, the club updates, all normal, until the last line. "And remember, if you see yourself in the hallway, do not speak." Laughter rippled through the classrooms, but when the intercom clicked off, the lights flickered once. A faint whisper echoed through the speaker. "She's already here." The voice that shouldn't exist during second period, rumors spread fast. No one knew who the girl on the announcement was. Principal Meyer swore he hadn't authorized any broadcast. The AV room was locked. The system logs, blank. By lunchtime, the school buzzed with unease. Some students claimed they heard the girl's voice whisper their names through the speakers between classes. Others said the announcement repeated faintly but backward. In the cafeteria, one teacher, Mrs. Rowan, walked by the speaker near the ceiling and froze. For a split second, her own voice echoed from it, repeating her words before she even spoke them. Emma, a sophomore, caught it on her phone, a glitching, overlapping echo. But when she replayed the recording later, it had changed. The voice now said, "Emma, go to the broadcast room." The locked broadcast room, Emma couldn't ignore it. After school, she snuck down to the old media hall behind the auditorium. The broadcast studio sign was cracked, letters faded. The door was chained shut, but one pane of glass was missing. She slipped inside. The air smelled like mildew and dust. Old microphones, monitors, and cassette players lined the walls. A single red on-air bulb glowed faintly in the corner. She found a dusty yearbook photo pinned to the corkboard, AV Club 1999. A girl with long dark hair smiled shyly at the camera. The caption read, "Megan Lowe, student announcer." Next to it in black marker, "She never signed off." Suddenly the microphone crackled to life. The same voice from the morning whispered, "Welcome back, Emma." The studio door slammed shut behind her. The broadcast that wouldn't end Emma's heart pounded as she tried to open the door, locked from the outside. The intercom light glowed brighter. "Megan Lowe," she whispered. "You're still here?" The speaker crackled with static, then a faint reply. "They forgot to turn me off." Through the glass, Emma saw something moving in the reflection of the control monitors, a figure standing behind her, flickering like a bad transmission. It looked like the girl from the yearbook photo, face pale and lips moving soundlessly. "Megan, what do you want?" Her voice echoed from every speaker in the school now, looping, rising. "If you hear me, you're next." Students and teachers across the building froze as Emma's voice, her terrified breathing, began playing over the PA system. The final announcement, the power cut out across the school. Emergency lights flickered red as Principal Meyer and the janitor forced the broadcast room door open. The chair inside was empty, spinning slowly. The microphone was still warm. Then, through every speaker, Emma's voice came on, calm, emotionless. "Good morning, Crescent Valley. Today's lunch is pizza sticks. Remember, don't look at the mirrors in the main hall." Teachers exchanged horrified glances. Emma's body hadn't been found, but her voice continued every morning that week. Same tone, same pause before the final line. On Friday, the announcement ended differently. "Thank you for listening. Megan says goodbye." The intercom crackled, then went silent for good. The echo that never stopped. A month later, Crescent Valley High installed a new digital PA system. The old one was dismantled and stored in the basement. But every so often, late at night, the janitor swore he heard faint voices coming from the storage room, looping old announcements. He once followed the sound, flashlight trembling, until he found the old microphone sitting on a table, cord plugged into nothing. It was broadcasting static, and under the static, two voices. One young, bright and calm. The other whispering faintly, scared, breaking through the distortion. "Please, someone turn it off." The janitor turned to leave, but before he shut the door, the red light on the mic flickered to life again. "Good morning, Crescent Valley. The substitute. The unannounced arrival. It was mid-November at Lincoln Ridge High School in Kansas, a quiet town surrounded by open fields and forgotten farms. The morning bell had barely rung when the PA system announced a sudden staff change. "Attention, students," the principal said. "Mr. Keene is out sick today. Please welcome your substitute, Mr. Holden. Room 214 English class." The students sat quietly as a tall man in a gray suit entered. His shoes made no sound on the linoleum. His smile was polite but didn't reach his eyes. "Good morning, class," he said, voice smooth and hollow. "Let's begin." Something about him was off, the way he stood too still, the way the fluorescent light seemed to bend around him. When he wrote his name on the board, the chalk squealed. The letters came out shaky, uneven, like they were fighting him, and halfway through writing Mr. Holden, the chalk snapped on its own. The lesson no one understood. He began his lesson, American literature and the darker side of imagination. But instead of opening the school textbook, he placed a worn leather-bound journal on the desk. Its cover was cracked, pages yellowed with age. "Who here knows the power of a story?" he asked softly. No one spoke. He smiled faintly. "Good, then I'll show you." He read a passage aloud, about a town that disappeared after a storm, its people trapped in a story they could never leave. As he spoke, the temperature dropped, frost forming on the window. Emma, the girl in the front row, whispered, "Mr. Holden, that story sounds like this town." He stopped mid-sentence and looked up. "Yes," he said slowly, "because it is." The lights flickered, and when they came back, the journal was open to a blank page, except for one fresh line being written on its own. "Room 214, 10:15 a.m. The lesson begins." The locked classroom students started to panic. One boy, Mason, tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. He yanked harder. It was sealed shut from the outside. Mr. Holden continued to speak calmly, ignoring the chaos. "Please sit down. You don't want to interrupt the story." The windows fogged completely, and faint shapes moved beyond the glass, like outlines of people walking in a heavy mist. Emma whispered, "What's outside?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the whiteboard and wrote one word, "Read." The letters began to drip, red, thick, like blood sliding down the board. When he turned back, his eyes were no longer brown. They were pitch black, reflecting nothing. "Readers," he said, "are participants. The story comes alive." The walls of the classroom began to change. The posters peeled, revealing wallpaper from decades ago. The desks shifted positions, old wooden ones replacing the metal. Even the air smelled different, dusty like an abandoned house. Emma looked at the clock, frozen at 10:15. Mr. Holden stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back. "Do you know what happens to unfinished stories?" he asked. The journal on his desk flipped open, pages turning rapidly before stopping on one with faint pencil sketches. Each student's face had been drawn, their expressions identical to the fear they wore now. He ran a hand over the page. "You're all characters," he said. "Written long ago, forgotten, until now." Mason screamed and lunged for him, but his body froze mid-motion like a paused video. His skin turned pale, lines appearing across him like pencil shading on paper. The burning pages, Emma grabbed the journal and threw it to the floor. "You're lying!" she shouted, stomping on it. The pages burned at her touch, a fire that didn't spread, just consumed the paper silently. Mr. Holden's calm expression finally changed. He looked angry. "You can't destroy the author," he said, voice echoing unnaturally. "Only the story." The fire spread to the walls, but the heat was wrong and it was cold, biting. The other students screamed as the classroom dissolved into darkness, their desks floating in a void of swirling pages. Emma clutched the half-burned journal, flipping to the first page. "November 12th, Lincoln Ridge High, English class. Only one will remember," she screamed, tearing the page out, and everything went white, the new substitute. The next morning, school resumed as normal. Room 214 looked untouched. New desks, new paint, as if nothing had happened. The principal introduced the replacement substitute, Mrs. Blake. "We had a scheduling mix-up yesterday," she said cheerfully. "Mr. Holden never arrived." The class laughed it off. But Emma, the only one who remembered, sat frozen at her desk. On the floor beneath her chair lay a single scrap of burned paper. She picked it up. The handwriting was hers, but she didn't remember writing it. He's not gone. He's writing again. As she looked toward the board, she gasped. In faint chalk, almost invisible, were the words, "Good morning, class." Let's begin where we left off. The chalk moved on its own, finishing the line. "Mr. Holden,